Sure thing, Dante. The extreme difficulty for mirror dungeons just came out, and with that we get an entirely new list of rewards that can only be obtained by beating 15 floors in the mirror dungeon. This is pretty hard since enemies scale in level, health, and damage really fast and can completely wipe your team in one turn if you don't do your run correctly. Before we get into how the dungeon works, I should mention that unlike normal mirror dungeon runs that only go to floor 5, you do need a serious team to be able to beat floor 15. Single status teams can work if they're more modern IDs, but hybrid status teams are going to be better. The reason for this is because in Mirror Dungeon Hard Mode, there are several tier 4s for each status that require 5 of a specific keyword on the field to activate. If you are going to have 5 of 2 different statuses on the same team, you can stack these strong ego gifts and roll super high with extra coin power buffs. There aren't too many hybrid teams at the moment, but some of the good ones are Rupture Poise, Sinking Tremor, Charge Rupture, Bleed Rupture, and Burn Tremor when the future Thumb IDs come out. There are other hybrid teams that exist, but these are the strongest ones at the moment. If you don't have the IDs to make any of these teams, single status teams will work as long as they're strong. Good ones include Rupture, Poise, Charge, and Tremor. Other teams definitely still work, but they don't really get a lot of coin power buffs. I should also mention that some hybrid teams aren't hard to make at all. For example, if you have all of the index IDs, you already have 3 Poise and Sinking IDs, so you can just add whatever 2 Poise IDs and whatever 2 Sinking IDs you want to activate the special ego gifts. The last thing to note is that you should try to have one really strong AoE ego for your main specific keyword. It's not a requirement, but will definitely make your life way easier in the last few floors if you need to fight several enemies in unfocused encounters. Alright, now that you've selected a team, you'll still need to do some planning before you enter the mirror dungeon. First is the Starlight upgrades you pick. This isn't a hard decision, just enhance and select them all. You should hopefully have enough Starlight to do so if you've pulled for new identities or grinded for Starlight. If you select all adversities, you tend to break even or even gain more Starlight, so don't worry about losing Starlight. If you buy all the upgrades and then fail a run, simply don't claim the rewards within Keflin modules and you'll get your Starlight back. While most of the Starlight upgrades give general buffs, there are some specific ones you should pay attention to. Accumulating Star Cloud increases your total scored cost by 30% after you defeat each floor's boss with a maximum cost received cap of 150. This means that if you have 500 cost after defeating the boss, you'll gain 150 cost for free, which you should always try to do. Accumulating Star Cloud also increases the cost you receive on the first ego gift you sell by double, which is pretty good if you need to sell vestiges for extra cost. Star Shower gives 150 cost when choosing Starlight reward cards, which is important to keep in mind because it won't actually state this on the card itself. I usually choose Starlight reward cards over other options because of this. Starlight Guidance is one of the weakest Starlight upgrades, so if you're going to save costs, you could ignore this upgrade. But personally, I've never done this since usually you break even with Starlight anyways, and I wouldn't suggest doing it unless you are experienced at the game. And last, there's Chance Comment, which will give you a free ego gift a tier below the first one you fuse in every single shop. I always try to fuse a tier 4 whenever I enter a shop, that way I get a free tier 3. I'd also suggest saving your early special tier 4 fusions for different floors, even if you can craft them immediately, that way you can easily fuse together a tier 4 when you enter your next shop. I even wait to craft Lunar Memory until I'm at my next shop, that way I can get a tier 4 for free. After you select the 3 ego gifts for the keyword you're running, enable the ego gift search toggle and then you can buy ego gifts with Starlight. There are various choices for what ego gifts you should select here, so I'll cover a few. Also, speaking of toggles, toggle on the mirror dungeon floor 10 thing before you enter a dungeon, or else it'll randomly end the dungeon at floor 5. Don't forget to do that, okay? I love being greedy, so I pick 3 economy ego gifts, those being Prestige Card, Golden Urn, and Milepost of Survivor. Prestige Card makes ego gifts 30% cheaper, Golden Urn increases cost gained from battles by 20%, and Milepost of Survivor gives extra cost at the end of each floor's boss. All of these are really good economy ego gifts, but there are some other options. Some people like swapping out a gift for Sharp Needle and Thread, which is a tier 3 keywordless ego gift that you can only get on floor 2. This ego gift is the best one in the game for increasing AoE ego damage for reasons I'll cover later. This is a viable option, but usually I YOLO on floor 2 and just hope I get it, but it's completely up to you. Another option is swapping out a gift with Emergency Investigator Badge, which is a tier 2 keywordless ego gift that, when enhanced, prevents one of your first 3 deployed sinners from dying when taking lethal damage, and then heals them up to 80% of their max HP while also giving general buffs. I'd suggest suggest this ego gift if you are newer to the game and don't plan on selecting the Time Kill and Time Rerun pack, as it offers super good insurance in case you struggle in the later stages. The last thing I'll mention is that your choice can vary a lot dependent on the team you use, especially if you plan to skip some important packs with ego gifts you need. This leaves so many different scenarios that I can't possibly cover them all. But there is one common scenario where for sinking teams you'll want to select either Haunted Shoes or Frozen Cries, since the packs these ego gifts show in are only available on floors 1 and 2. That way you can buy one with Starlight, grab the other one on floor 1, fuse them together for the Strong tier 4 sinking ego gift, and then select the Hell's Chicken pack and get all the free tier 3s and Sharp Needle there. Now that you're in the dungeon, here's a few things you should do differently than your normal mirror dungeon runs. For Dungeon Pathin', I'd suggest prioritizing event nodes since they can offer ID levels and free ego gifts. If you have the option to battle an abnormality, you could pick it since you'll get extra ego gifts for doing so, but I typically don't since it'll make your runs longer. The only time I wouldn't suggest picking event nodes is if you're low on cost and trying to get more. While in normal runs, you'll usually want to avoid focused encounters since they can take longer. In extreme mirror dungeon runs, you'll want to target these since your goal is to get as much cost as possible rather than completing the mirror dungeon as soon as possible. For shops, always replace skills of the IDs you're using. By the time you hit the later floors, you should have only skill 3s for most of your IDs. Also, apparently using the new skill search doesn't count towards your 2 skill replacements. I thought it would, but I think it's just a 3rd skill replacement that costs double. So if you want to get all skill 3s for all your IDs, you would just have to spend extra for this 3rd skill replacement. You should always try to buy out the entire shop, or at least until your super shop chance is 100%. This is hard to do on floor 1, but if you buy expensive ego gifts or enhanced ego gifts, that'll help increase your super shop chance. Super shops are important as you can buy more ego gifts, replace an extra skill for your IDs, and also fuse more ego gifts with increased fusion odds. I'd always suggest waiting to fuse for ego gifts until you're in a super shop, but this isn't something you'll have to worry about a lot since most of the time you'll be able to constantly get super shops. Also, remember to always fuse a tier 4 when you enter the shop, that way you benefit from getting a free tier 3 from the Starlight upgrade. With Starlight upgrades, you'll get 2 free normal refreshes and 2 free keyword refreshes. The order you do these in is important since buying ego gifts obviously means less ego gift roll-in when you refresh. Because of this, early on into the run, I'd suggest doing normal refreshes first since you can roll for the generous ego gifts that help with cost or ego resources as soon as possible. If you're trying to get a specific keyword ego gift that's exclusive to a particular pack, I'd suggest keyword refreshing first, and then possibly spending cost to keyword refresh more if you didn't get it yet. Then use your free refreshes. If you ever need extra cost to buy something, I'd suggest selling a tier 3 vestige. These are pretty easy to get if you're fusing for tier 4s on every floor, and the first one will sell for double at 300, which is quite a lot. For floor rewards or mountain trials, stop thinking that mountain trials buff you. Dude, they're called mountain trials for it's trial, it's in the name. What did you think it did? With that said, these are super important to understand, so I'll reiterate what I said in my original guide, showing which ones are the worst first. The absolute worst pick is coin powered. This buffs the enemies unlike any other selection. Never pick a pack with the assumption that you'll get the ego gift shown as a reward, because if it's coin powered, there is zero scenario where you should pick it. Base power and final power are the next worst, and operate essentially the same. There's some difference with damage calculation, but it's too minuscule for me to explain in detail. Try to avoid these as much as possible. Clash power is almost just as bad, but only adds +1 to the Clash's roll and not the actual roll that's doing damage. Try to avoid this as much as possible, but do note that it's a better choice than base power or final power if it comes down to that. Then there's offense level up, which increases overall damage and gives Clash power. This buff comes down to more of a formula, but the most important thing you should remember is that every 3 levels is +1 Clash power for the enemy. So if your options are between +1 Clash power or +6 offense level up, technically the +1 Clash power would be better, because +6 level up would be +2 Clash power and more damage for the enemy anyways. The 3 best trials to pick are health increase, defense level up, and damage taken, since that won't increase the enemy's rolls. Damage taken sounds terrible, but apparently with the way the formula is applied, it actually doesn't decrease how much damage you do by a lot, but honestly I'm not sure how true that is. So, early on, I'd suggest paying attention to how much levels each choice is given, since that can be an important factor in your decisions. I very rarely make my decision based on the ego gift shown, unless it's a very strong tier 4 I need, where I'd be willing to take it for most trials except coin power. Now's the fun part, where I rattle off a list of ego gifts that are good for all teams. I'm not going to explain what these do in extreme detail because there's like 30 of them and that would take way too long. First, I'll mention keywordless ego gifts. Almost all of them are good, so I'm not going to mention them all, but I will mention the ones that are a really high priority and you should try to pick up. Tier 4s include Faith heals SP to max for free. Piece of Relationship gives 10 levels to sinners at max level, a very high priority. For You Who Love the City is a very good heal and ego gift. Non-Disclosure Agreement is a general damage buff. Ricardo is an exclusive line 2 ego gift that increases all sinners HP by a lot, very important to get. Keywordless tier 3s include Special Contract deals 33% of total enemies' HP as damage once they're staggered. Grand Welcome gives ego resources on enemy defeat. Rusty Commemorative Coin makes single coin skills repeat for free. OP for IDs like Lord Lu. Tango Marinade is an exclusive Hell's Kitchen ego gift that gives free clash power. Sharp Needle and Thread is also an exclusive Hell's Kitchen ego gift and is arguably one of the best ego gifts in the game, as mentioned earlier. Then there's important economy ego gifts you should try to get ASAP. Tier 3s in order from best to worst include Prestige Card makes ego gifts cheaper. Renewed Merch makes enhancements cheaper. Trial Plan Guide makes skills replacements cheaper. Pre-order Discount makes refreshes cheaper. Then economy tier 2s from best to worst include Golden Urn, which gives 20% more cost from battles. Milepost of Survival, which gives 115 extra cost after every floor's boss. Voracious Hammer, which gives 3 cost for each enemy defeated. Rebate Token, which gives a 20% chance that you're refunded when enhancing. And New Release Pamphlet, which gives a 20% chance that you're refunded when refreshing. Try to get most of these ASAP since they'll save you a lot of cost. The rest of the good keywordless tier 2s include Harmilia, which makes enemies lose 30% of their max HP at combat start. Should honestly be a way higher tier, this ego gift is really good. Metronome from line 2, which gives free damage up or protection. And Anti-Ovine Ground Implug from line 4, which inflicts paralysis. Okay, that's a lot, but now I'll go through the keyword ego gifts that are good for all teams. Getting all of these in one run can be pretty challenging, but you should try to get as many as possible. First, the tier 4 damage type ego gifts. The Book of Vengeance, Dueling Manual Book, and Broken Greatsword buff blunt, pierce, and slash respectively. If you have a team that does only slash damage, you only need to get Broken Greatsword, but if you do all types of damage, get all 3. Then there's the 3 memories. These only buff the first 2 sinners deployed, so you'll only need one of these if you make sure that your first 2 sinners do the same damage. Although you will need 3 at some point to craft Lunar Memory, which costs all 3 memories and then 2 fragments. Lunar Memory is the only tier 5 of the game, and it essentially allows you to do 4 times more damage. Always get this in your Mirror Dungeon Extreme runs. If you accidentally craft a memory or fragment ego gift when you wanted something else, save it for whenever you craft Lunar Memory. Speaking of fragments, if you have a strong AoE ego with a specific keyword, get the fragment for its keyword to buff it. There are various lower tier damage keyword ego gifts that are good, and I'm not going to cover them all. If your team does mostly one type of damage, pick up ego gifts for that keyword. Now for the specific status keyword ego gifts that are good for all teams, highest priority should be Poise ego gifts, which make you do insane damage. Clear Mirror, when enhanced, makes you do 2.5 times more damage on crit. Get Nebulizer, enhance it to give all your IDs poise each turn, and add 4-leaf clover to gain even more poise. Then get Cigarette Holder, Infinite Fugality for more damage and clash power. Always get these ego gifts no matter the team, they buff your team by a lot. Downpour inflicts Tremor and bursts it. This doesn't do anything for generalist teams, but Bell of Truth and Melted Eyeball apply great debuffs after Tremor burst. Charge type Gloves buffs your number 1 deployed sinner and gives your entire team charge. Some other charge gifts give general buffs if you have charge on your IDs, like Night Vision Goggles, Wrist Guards, and UPS system. Red Stained Gossipium applies bleed to all enemies and then removes offense level if they have bleed on them. Very good ego gift, make sure you get this and enhance it. Artistic Sense, when enhanced, basically makes you do 50% more damage for free. Melted Spring and Skeletal Crumbs also apply minor debuffs. And that's most of the good generalist ego gifts. There are more, but I mostly only mentioned the notable ones. When doing a run, I first focus on getting as many of the economy gifts as I can while also getting the gifts for my team's keywords. Then by floor 4 or so, I'll start getting the poise gifts, then getting egos for my main damage type's keyword at about floor 6. And then lastly, spend in floors 6 through 10 getting the generalist tier 4 egos while also eventually making Lunar Memory. It's a lot, but you'll get the hang of it the more you play. Now for the floors that you should pick. Floors 1 through 4 are usually just generalist packs, but choices can vary depending on your team. For floor 1, Outcast or Unloving are good generalist packs for any keyword. Pick Outcast if you're running Rupture for the Rupture gift, pick Unloving or Automated Factory for one of the Sinking ego gifts if you're sinking, or pick Dregs of the Manor for a good generalist Unstagger gift. You should always pick Hell's Kitchen for floor 2, since Sharp Needle and Thread is arguably one of the strongest ego gifts in the entire game. Sharp Needle is a tier 3 keywordless ego gift that makes the first skill you use do half of the total damage as damage to every enemy that you hit. This is an okay ego gift for skills, but when when the first move you use is an AoE ego that does insane damage, it'll get out of control really fast. Think of it this way, if there are 5 enemies with 1000 health and you do 500 damage to all of them, Sharp Needle and Thread will take half of the 2500 total damage and deal it to every single enemy, killing them all instantly. This is why on later floors, if you want to kill a group of enemies as fast as possible, you should use a strong AoE ego as your first skill. If you only have one strong ego on one ID, you can use defense skills with your faster IDs and then let the ego hit first. If you don't get Sharp Needle from floor 2, the mirror dungeon will still be beatable, but will be a lot harder if you pick packs with a lot of enemies. Your choice at this point is to either keep going, restart, or just simply buy Sharp Needle with Starlight if you don't want to worry about pulling it. Usually I just keep going anyways since you can complete a mirror dungeon without it. On floor 3, pick Confront and if Bleed, Hatred and Despair if Charge, Full Stopped by a Bullet if Poise or as a generalist pick, or a Certain World if Tremor or as a generalist pick. Overall, a lot of options here. Floor 4 used to be the guaranteed line 2 floor, since Bridal is a very strong HP ego gift, but in the recent update, line 2 now shows up on floors 5 through 10 as well. So I'd actually suggest waiting until floor 10 for this pack. For what theme pack you should select, it's kinda overall a really wildcard floor. If you need a generalist pack from floor 3 like the Walpurgis packs, a lot of them appear here and then disappear past floor 4. So pick one of them if you need. Floors 5 through 10 are where the main packs with exclusive ego gifts for specific keywords are. I can't go through what each team should do for each floor individually since that would take way too long. Instead, I'll show what packs each status type should go for. They'll be listed in priority from most important to least, going left to right. And that's all the packs. If you need to select any of the newer packs from Cano 9 or 8, pick them immediately on floor 5 or 6. If you wait until later, they will be really hard, since most of the bosses in these packs have insane gimmicks and high damage unbreakables. If you're running a hybrid team with 2 keywords, select the highest priority theme packs from the 2 statuses you're running. I should also add that there are other status ego gifts I haven't mentioned simply because of how niche they are. A good example of this is the Burn Ego Blood Flame Sword from Spring Cultivation, which is only really good if you're using the Burn High Show IDs or other self-burn IDs. There are several ego gifts like this throughout the game that I simply cannot cover. This is knowledge you'll pick up with time by reading ego gifts, but if you'd like to go through the list of ego gifts yourself, in the description I'll link wiki pages that show all of the ego gifts and all of the theme packs in the game. If you have spare slots for packs at floor 8 or onward, pick the Miracle and District 20 Rerun theme pack, since this has a really good tier 4 Poise ego gift. This can be pretty hard to craft, requiring a keyword list tier 3, but don't worry if you don't get it. Line 5 is another option, but this can be hard since they have unbreakables. At floor 10, you should pick line 2 to get Bridal. This ego gift will give your sinners way more health, but it can be hard to pull since it's a keyword list tier 4. I would suggest being pretty chill at this floor shop. Spam normal refreshes, buy specifically only tier 4s that you need, and try to get Bridal and Metronome as well. If you get unlucky with your refreshes, fuse for a tier 4 for a random keyword that you already own the egos for. This will fuse for an entirely random tier 4 ego gift, which has a decent chance at being Bridal. Lastly, you should enhance as many ego gifts as possible. Make sure your tier 4s are enhanced first, and then enhance all of your other ego gifts. Sell vestiges or useless ego gifts to do this if you need more costs. Past floor 10, you'll be selecting adversities that make everything on shops cost double, so make sure you remember to do this now rather than later. At floors 11 through 15 is where things ramp up in difficulty. You should pick all the adversities to get 1000 of the achievement currency and get your Starlight back. Adversities will apply a lot of different debuffs, but the most notable are ones that decrease your max SP, making your coin rolls more random, and ones that increase how much things cost in the shop. Now if you've managed your ego gifts well, you should hopefully have dominating clashes until floor 12 or 13. Because of this, I personally like picking line 4 or line 5 on floor 11 for the good ego gifts in those packs. Though these packs are the hardest ones to pick at this point, and the ego gifts you receive won't really change the outcome of your fights that much, so if you want to simply play it safe and avoid it, I'd pick a beautiful voice. For the next 4 floors, the order I normally pick packs in is CSR, Efflorescent Greenery, Bridle of Infinity, and then a certain library last. This fight is pretty easy as it's just one enemy that doesn't do much damage, so always pick it last. I personally prefer this order, and it's especially good if you didn't get Sharp Needle or if you don't have a lot of good AoE egos. If you're pretty good at the game and have good egos, I do CCR at floor 14 and also do other unfocused encounter packs instead, since a single strong ego with Sharp Needle can wipe out every enemy in a single turn. Avoid the rest of the packs like the Plague. Packs like N-Corp New League of 9 or Who Couldn't Be Blood Fiends have strong unbreakable coins that can single-handedly ruin your run. Even if there's a good theme pack reward for completing it, don't pick it, trust me. At this point, you can't really do much at shops. If you're missing a few of the higher tier ego gifts, do normal refreshes for those. If you're low on health or SP, heal all of your sinners before going into your next fight, so that they have 45 SP for one turn before the SP cap kicks in. Speaking of having low health, there's a 10% chance a hidden boss event triggers every time you enter an event node. These are really hard, but they give super strong ego gifts that give coin power to all of your IDs. There are currently 4 hidden bosses in the game, those being Ricardo, Lehane, Virgilius, and Don Quixote. The boss you get is entirely random, but you can actually sometimes tell what boss it is based on its weaknesses shown before you enter. If it shows Gluttony and Envy, it's Lehane. If it shows Blunt, it's Ricardo. And if it shows no weaknesses, it's a 50-50 chance between Virgilius and Don Quixote. Out of all 4, Lehane is definitely the easiest. Ricardo can be really hard since his counter can become so strong he one-shots your sinners, but if you use a few of your weaker sinners to eat his counter, it shouldn't be too terrible. I've heard Don Quixote can be pretty terrible since he has a ton of unbreakables in several different phases, but I can't really give advice on it since I've literally never gotten Don Quixote or Virgilius. I kid you not, I've done over 15 extreme runs and I've only gotten Lehane or Ricardo like 5 times each. I've also done 8 Mirror Dungeon extreme runs in a row without getting a single hidden boss. I can't even show footage. Like, I did runs and I didn't get a hidden boss. It's like a 60% chance every time you do a run. If you get lucky and get a hidden boss early, I'd always suggest doing it. If you don't get one until floor 14 or 15, I'd avoid it since the ramping can be really insane and these fights will completely crush you. Unless it's Lehane. He's kinda really easy. The last few floors can be pretty hard, especially since your first turn of clashes will likely be hopeless. If this is the case, target the enemy with unopposed skills with your fastest sinners while using a slower sinner to tank damage. A lot of ego buffs only apply debuffs on hit or after turn end, so if you can survive the first turn, usually you'll be able to clash better. If that's not the case, don't hopelessly clash into enemies. Instead, do unopposed attacks with hopes that you do enough damage before they can kill you. Also, don't forget that there's several Sapling of Light abilities that could help you out if things get really bad. Hesed's Mercy is really good at making clashes easier if there's a huge level difference, and Gebro's ability is really good at healing your strongest ID and doing a ton of damage. If you still have questions about how to do a run, I'm going to have a full runs recorded in the description of this video. I'd suggest checking it out if you want to see how I utilize shops or see how I take down enemies in the last few floors. So, did that make sense?